Et gaff til a gaff. Et gaff til a gaff. I'm illy with the till a gaff. Illy with the till a gaff. Nit gaff, nit gaff. Nit gaff, nit gaff.
Alright then. So we're back at it, the GGPLS. And today I'm going to be talking about George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter protests. Now, if you've been listening to this podcast, you know that I've had a lot to say about white supremacy and white Anglo-Saxon Protestant males and the fact that the global economic system is actually designed and organized for their benefit over and above everybody else. So in terms of that, I kind of wouldn't really have a lot to add. You know, it's like a lot of the world, I wouldn't even say it's waking up. That sounds kind of derogatory and condescending. But a lot of the world are discussing this fact. Whereas, you know, a lot of people knew it before, but it wasn't being discussed. It was being discussed in very small groups or very small podcasts like this. You know, this ain't the Joe Rogan podcast. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't have 10 million listeners. And I don't know if Joe Rogan's done a podcast on white supremacy. He sounds to me like the kind of guy who would. But my point is, I think Jordan Peterson is probably getting 100,000, 200,000, 3, 4 million downloads on his YouTube, trying to counteract the belief that white supremacy exists and getting a lot more play and airtime than any of the people trying to point out what I can only say is the obvious fact that white supremacy in society exists. You know, I think it's obvious. And that's kind of what this podcast is going to be about. So my point I'm really making is that this isn't new. It's not new to this podcast and it's not new to me. And it's been 2 weeks since my last podcast. You know, this is a twice monthly podcast. Fortnightly podcast. So effectively, when I made the last podcast, I think I put a statement up because it's the only thing I could have done with regards to the George Floyd murder and the Black Lives Matters, the Ahmaud Arbery, and you know, the list just goes on. I'm sorry I don't commit them all to memory. I just don't. I don't commit a lot of stuff to memory, as you know. Anyway, I'm not a details guy. I just know what's going on. I know about the woman who got shot in a home because they broke into her house thinking that it was a drug raid. I think she was a police woman off duty and they shot her in her bed. I know about the guy who got shot because some drunken woman or idiot woman, I can't work out which, stumbled into the wrong house, assumed it was her house and he was an intruder in her house, although she was an intruder in his house, called the police and had him shot. You know, it just goes on. So anyway, my point being, you know, this is not a new topic for me, so I don't want to address it like a new topic. But last week I was so hurt, like so much of the population. Well, I think we all went through these stages. I think we first went through a stage of hurt and outrage at watching a video of a man being murdered by somebody who did it in such a callous way, like he was like, you know, on safari killing an animal and just kneeling on it like a trophy, and with this callous, arrogant, superior disregard that he could do that and nothing would be done about it. You know, he had that kind of complete power over other human beings, and it was very clear that it was a racist and racially motivated murder, so he had that kind of complete power over black people. You know, we felt the hurt and the outrage of that. Then about midweek, halfway through the first week, I realized I was in trauma. And I thought it was just me, that I found it that I couldn't work. I kind of had to take a couple of days of work. Luckily, I worked for myself, so I just stopped working. I had a couple of things that I had to do, essential things that other people were depending on. So I did those, but I didn't do anything else. I had to deal with the fact that I was actually traumatized by what I'd seen. And then I got really into my understanding that I was actually not just traumatized by what I'd seen, but I was being re-traumatized by the bullshit that the white supremacy or apologists, the people who are trying to perpetrate the system by gaslighting everyone else in the world, that it doesn't really exist or it's not that bad, or finding excuses, or but what about this type of conversations, they were re-traumatizing me. Because part of trauma is acknowledgement. You know, I'm not a psychologist, but I can pretty much damn well, I pretty much damn well know without any psychological training that part of trauma or reinforcement of trauma is if people don't believe you. You know, you hear this with women who've been raped or children who've been abused, that, you know, the fact that no one believed them was part of the trauma. So when all these fuckers, these fucktards and these utter cunts hiding behind their veneer of respectability start posting, you know, all lives matters, or deflecting with, but look at the rioters, or talking about, but more blacks kill blacks than police, and the statistics show that these things are minimal and you've got no right to complain about them. You know, these essentially evil fucks who are trying to hide behind a veneer of respectability and normality, they re-traumatize you. Because I've been saying that, we've been saying this since day one, since Black Radical day one, since fucking B-Boys Be Wise, since Ain't No Black in Union Jack. We've been saying this. Racism is not about a jackboot Nazi chasing black people down the roads to give them a good kicking. That's the tip of the iceberg. Racism is the system and all of its components that allow those people to be the tip of the iceberg, because the whole system and construction of it works against peoples of color and in favor of white, usually white minorities. So, you know what I mean? That's the whole system of racism. And these fuckers in the middle, not the tip of the iceberg, not the KKK or the EDL or the NF or whatever the fuck they call themselves this week. They disband and reband so often because they're so pathetic. Do you know what I mean? None of these guys are really important. They are the fucking exception to the rule. The rule are the white people who make the apologies, deflect the issues, and try and gaslight you by telling you that the shit isn't really happening. And those are the fuckers that were re-traumatizing me. After seeing the murder, that was bad enough. It was there for anybody who could see, anybody with sight could see this guy was murdered. And rather than dealing with just this one incident of absolute outrageous fucking horrendous, heinous crime, they would find any other fucking conversation than having to deal with that. That was horrible, but, you know, that was horrible. 3 words. The but, 10 paragraphs. Any way to minimalize it. That was horrible, but look at the looting. Isn't the looting worse? Don't you think it's terrible to be destroying public property? What are these people trying to achieve? Oh, you're being just controlled by Antifa. There's a bunch of loads of motherfuckers. It's George Soros. It's just re-traumatizing. So I got to the end of the first week and I'd been biting my lip, and then I couldn't anymore. So what I decided to do was, rather than going in and tearing people's head off, which would have been me 30 years ago, I would have just gone in and start tearing everyone's head off for talking shit. And a lot of people were doing that. And what had happened, I had a conversation with a guy who was kind of in the process of doing that. And he made me really think about my responsibility in this conversation, that I couldn't just say, yo, I dedicated my life to this fight like 20 years ago, so fuck it, your time now. He made me really think about my responsibility. So like I said, it wasn't really enough to just bang out a couple of Freestyle Fridays, you know, as a response to the situation. In fact, by the way, the first Freestyle Friday I recorded, I didn't even post, because I just finished listening to Outwitting the Get Devil, which is the actual one that I posted that week, the book by Napoleon Hill. And in terms of, you know, this concept of the devil using fear as his number one tool to control humanity and direct it in, you know, a negative way to get the humanity to buy into and live into negativity and, you know, and cause more problems in the world, I decided not to use my anger and my hurt and the hate that it stirred up inside me and post that Freestyle Friday, which was just anger, hurt, and hate. So I didn't post it. You know, it wouldn't have been the first time I posted 2 Freestyle Fridays. I put the Sympathy for the Devil one out there. And I had another one, a direct response to what happened to the video I'd seen, the murder of George Floyd, and I decided not to post it. That was me trying to be responsible and putting less hate out into the world. The following Friday, I put out the one over the victory beat because it was more what I wanted to say in the long term. And especially, you know, if anybody saw the Instagrams I put up when I put out the Freestyle Friday, it was the pictures of the protests all around the world, primarily in white parts of the world, majority white parts of the world, like Sweden and the Netherlands and Germany, protests in South Africa. Okay, not majority white, but you know what I mean? Protests in South Africa and Australia. That really heartened me, because what we were trying to do 30 years ago, I remember, you know, I had an agenda of doing 2 things: talking to black people about their situation and talking to white people about the situation of black people. That was the absolute agenda. Yeah, basically that was the agenda. So at a moment where I was kind of feeling like all was lost because of the resurgence of the right, the alt-right, you know, all this bullshit, Trump, Bolsonaro, what's going on in Italy, Hungary, etc., etc., I saw these people coming out into the streets, and I thought, yo, maybe your little contribution, like everything, you know, maybe you had a part contribution in all of these young white people knowing this shit is wrong. That's what the plan of talking to white people was about. That's what I wanted to see. I don't know if I would have seen it 20 years ago, but I certainly didn't feel like I would have seen it 20 years ago. Don't get it twisted. There have always been white people who have fought against white supremacy and fought against racism and fought for the equality of black people or other nations, or the equality of humanity, however you want to swing it. But particularly people who fought against the injustices that black and brown people have suffered as a priority, and understanding that needed a particular addressing. Not just, we want everybody to be equal, but understanding that, yes, we want everyone to be equal, and the most downtrodden people have to be elevated before we get anywhere near that. And they need special attention and focus. They've always been that, right from slavery, abolition of slavery, right through to Jim Crow, right through to black voting rights, Martin Luther King. They've always been. Even that very famous quote, that thing that Malcolm X said he regretted when a young white girl came up to him after listening to him speak and said, you know, what can I do? And he said to her, absolutely nothing. I always think that was a pivotal point in Malcolm X's life, when he realized that he shouldn't have said that to that girl, somebody who wanted to help, somebody who understood, someone whose humanity had been touched and awoken by listening to somebody explaining the wrongs and injustices of the world and wanted to do something about it, and to have that crushed in such a cruel way. He made it clear that that was the wrong thing to do. So with all of that in my understanding, you know, where I was looking at it, I decided the best thing I could do was do an Ask Me Anything. So on one of my business pages, a training and mentoring page, I put up an Ask Me Anything, and I boosted it as a Facebook post. I boosted it out there, spent my own money to tell people that this is an Ask Me Anything, particularly for anybody who wants to talk about George Floyd, the Black Lives Matters protests that have sprung up around George Floyd, which means the whole concept of the process with regards to white supremacy, injustices that black people are suffering, racial inequality, racism, the whole, you know, kit and caboodle. And particularly it was a safe space for white people who wanted to ask questions and not be attacked or judged. Because what I had seen, I won't say quite rightly, but, you know, understandably so, was a lot of white people had put up questions or made statements. Like, you know, I'm in a lot of business groups on social media. So white people have made statements on business groups, and they had been torn to shit. But as I've said previously in a different edition of this podcast, you know, I don't appreciate being vilified for shit I don't know. Like I said, I made the example of, you know, people who are gender neutral, gender non-specific, and me not knowing how to address them and not wanting to be made out to be or vilified or attacked for being a bad person because I don't know shit. I accept being vilified and made to be a bad person if I'm constantly reminded of shit and I ignore it. And I appreciate a lot of black people feel that way about white people. But I'm a bit more conciliatory maybe because I'm older. So I'm like, okay, if you don't know shit, and I absolutely want to make this point. I don't expect white people to understand black shit. And I don't expect white people to understand racism because most people are frankly self-interested. They're interested in themselves, their lives, they've got shit to do. This is why the fuckers like Jordan Peterson can have such a big effect in this world, because when people are made to feel bad about what they're not doing, about the plights of others, it's easy to come along and go, listen, man, you got your own shit. Why is everybody acting like you got no problems? And no one ever said that. And I've covered all that already, I think, in How the Left Was Lost. No one ever said that. And I don't expect you to go looking for fucking fires to put out all over the world when you've got your own bills to pay and your own insecurities and your own family and relationship problems and shit going down. I understand that. What I don't expect you to do is to pretend that, things aren't the way they are. It's kind of obvious that there is racism and injustice, and the fact that you pretend it doesn't exist, that is wrong. I'm not expecting you to spend your whole life fighting it, but I do expect you, if you want to look at yourself in the mirror and decide that and see that you're a decent human being, and then go out into society and tell people that you don't see colour and you're not a racist and you don't support racist systems, if that's true, then I expect you to fight those things. Otherwise, you're lying to yourself and the rest of society. It's your business, but just don't waste my time. So, I don't expect that. So, one of the best examples, one of my mentors actually had put up something again, and this is he was one of the influences of me doing the Asking Me Anything, where he literally said, two of my mentors actually had said, I'm very aggrieved, I'm very pissed off at people saying that white silence is violence, and people are hitting me up on my DM telling me how the fuck have I not said anything about this George Floyd. And they both basically said, I don't know enough about it. And then they got massively attacked. And I think there was validity in their attacks. The people who attacked them were valid. I'm not saying they were wrong. Like saying, what the fuck you mean you don't know enough about it? I was happy with, this is my opinion on it. And they both made a statement and said, I don't think I know enough about this, but this is my opinion on it. Personally, I think that was the right response, because that's the response I would make if, let's say, a transgender person had been attacked. And I would say, I know that transgender people exist. I know transgender people experience injustices and prejudice and inequalities, but I don't really know a lot about it. I'm not an expert about it. It doesn't affect my daily life. So this is my opinion on what I've seen, as much, whatever the circumstance might be, as much as I understand. And that's kind of what these guys said, and I was good with that. I don't expect more from them than that. And one of them went a little bit more into it, and he said one thing now, which I absolutely loved. He actually said that. Then he said a few things, went straight to it, as people often do, went straight from, I know this is terrible, everyone saw the murder, it's awful. I didn't make a statement before because I didn't think I knew enough about it to be vocal about it, but people made me realise that not being vocal about it is being vocal about it. Silence speaks volumes. So I've decided to come out and say, yes, I saw the murder. Yes, it's atrocious. Yes, I understand racism exists. Yes, I support an anti-racist agenda, but most importantly, I don't support violence, looting, which was kind of expected, no big deal. But at the end of it, he did say this one thing about this Jane Elliott experiment, which I had not seen, but he said someone had sent to him. And apparently at the end of the experiment, she said these words. She said to this room of white people, okay, everybody, stand up if, knowing what you know about the way black people are treated in society and the experiences black people have in society, their position, their status, you would be happy to spend your life being treated like a black person. And apparently no one stood up. So then she repeated, no, I don't think you understand. What I'm saying to you is, if you would be happy to be treated the way black people are treated in this society, to live the way black people live in this society, if you would be happy to live that way, stand up. And everybody remains seated. So his point was, and I really respect him for this, he's like, yeah, we fucking know. Like, yeah, he actually contradicted his own argument. He started off by saying, I don't know enough about it. But ended up by saying, well, actually, I saw this video, this experiment, and we say we don't know enough about it. But when someone genuinely says to us, would you like to live like a black person? We're like, fuck no. So we obviously know enough about it. Kudos to him. I'm not going to call out his name, but I really fucking appreciated that. Do you know what I mean? And like I said, all these things informed me to do this Ask Me Anything. I thought, you know what, I'm going to create a safe space for people like him who might want to have a conversation about their views around racism and the George Floyd murder and Black Lives Matters and white supremacy, systematic racism, without being attacked and vilified for the shit they don't know or opinions that they might hold, which, you know, aren't really correct, but might change, you know, with a bit of respectful conversation. So I did it. Now, I knew I was going to get a lot of trolling. I kind of set myself up for that, but for me, it was kind of funny because I was like, yo, if I go on my fucking social media, I get trolled anyway. I get trolled anyway by the fuckers who are putting up the deflection and the minimalization and the apologies. So what's the fucking point? There's no difference. I may as well at least be in control of the trolling because it's on my fucking thread. So I did that with my business partner in the Kevin's Filling training, Kevin, and I was happy with it because actually we didn't get much ridiculous trolling. I got some very right-wing people with very right-wing views, and I was cool with that because I was happy to debate their right-wing views. And they were respectful in presenting their right-wing views. So kudos to everybody actually on that. The actually, believe it or not, when you put yourself out there to, you know, the potential of really receiving so much abuse, the worst abuse I personally think appeared on that page, on that thread, where I asked people to have a conversation about racism in a time of so much racial tension. The actual worst trolling we got was a couple of people who put this stupid little picture up of a dog taking a shit, saying you paid Facebook to shit on my timeline, so I'm returning the favor. It's like, yeah, whatever. You don't like adverts on Facebook, scroll on. Do you know what I mean? Like, I see adverts for fucking dick extenders on my Facebook feed, like, and what? You know what I mean? But, you know, people do stuff because it makes them feel clever, fill your boots. But it made me laugh because I was like, wow, that's probably the fucking worst thing someone said. Everything else someone said was their political view. And you see, I don't mind debating people with their political views. And some of these people's political views may, for example, be stronger than people like Jordan Peterson or Katie Hopkins. But the difference is, I honestly think they were more susceptible to debating and potentially even changing their views than Jordan Peterson or Katie Hopkins, who are not. They're just making a fucking living out of it. They're well aware of what they're both well aware of the truth. Nothing will make me change my mind about that. Katie Hopkins is a grade A game player, a grade A narcissist, a grade A manipulator. So she's well aware of the truth because all fucking narcissists are. All of those kind of sociopaths know you have to know the truth in able to manipulate people a certain way. Whereas people like Tommy Robinson are just fucking idiots. Do you know what I mean? One of my man said that he's not a racist and spout racist shit. He's just a fucking idiot. See, Trump will tell you he's not a racist and spout racist shit because he's a sociopath. He knows what he's doing. He understands push, pull. He gets that. He understands that if he tells you he's not a racist, some people will believe him and some people want to believe him. Tommy Robinson, I don't think he's that clever. I think he's just an attention seeker who's found a way to make himself important, like lots of other right-wing leaders in the past. I saw a really interesting documentary on right-wing people a couple of years ago. While I'm making this podcast, by the way, there is a right-wing protest in the UK, an anti-Black Lives Matter protest. I'm looking at the news right now, running through the streets, confronting the police. Right as I'm making this podcast. I'm making this on the 13th. And it's 1 o'clock English time, and I'm looking at BBC News, and it says basically, Black Lives Matter protesters and right-wing groups clash in Trafalgar Square. But that was always going to happen. Do you know what I mean? Not because we're not allowed to protest. Now, let's be clear. Some of the protests, what's what I'm looking for, included vandalism. And everyone can have their own view. Now, I don't even really want to go too deep into that right about now. But the point is, the right-wing people, them, again, Well, they're clearing it because they're racist. So that's what I'm trying to say. That's cool because we know where they are. They expect us to be subservient. Their view of the world is that they are superior to us and we should be subservient. So of course they're going to let us protest for equality. Obviously. You know what I mean? That's duh. So that ain't a problem, man. And as you should know by now, I advocate everybody learns self-defense. So in any walk of life you meet somebody, anybody who thinks that you should be inferior to them and live a life subservient to them and they're going to try and use their physical power to enforce that, you can fuck them up and kill them. Fuck them up, preferably. Kill them if you have to. Because human beings have an inalienable right. Inalienable right. Let me just make sure that's clear. An inalienable right at birth to freedom of their life and their liberty and self-expression. So anybody who comes to you to try and take away the right that God, or more importantly, the universe gave you to self-expression by controlling you and subjugating you and taking away your ability to maximize yourself in expression of freedom, you have the right to defend yourself against that person to whatever extent is necessary. So you see, I don't go looking for racists, but I done told you already, kill them man there and sleep like a baby. Anybody come try to take my life? Whatever, man. One of us ain't leaving. I already made my peace with God, so I'm good. And I ain't no like chat, because the people that I rode now is where I was 30 years ago. You know what I mean? Saying no long chat. I was on road 30 years ago, having the same fights. That's why I find it so depressing that now this generation has to be on road having the same fights with the same racists, with the same racist agenda, trying to get the same equality and fighting the same injustices. So the fucking idiots who say all lives matter when we say Black Lives Matter can actually fucking have their supposed, because I don't believe them, they're a bunch of lying fuckers, but they can actually have their supposed worldview realized. Because you can't say all lives matter until all lives are treated equally. And the Black Lives Matter conversation is about the fact that Black lives are not treated equally. And when all lives are treated equally, then we can say all lives matter. But to say all lives matter, yet some lives are treated equally, is a fucking contradiction in terms, which is why we know you're insincere, you lying motherfuckers. So fuck you. Fuck all of you all lives matters people. Fuck you. Because you're lying, insincere, system protecting, because this system works out just fine and dandy for me. And when it doesn't, I run to Jordan Peterson and Katie Hopkins going, well, I've got problems too. Why is everybody else complaining about how hard their life is and expecting me to fix it? I've got my own problems, like a bunch of neurotic little fuckers you are. Because you're so fucking privileged, the fact that your latte is a little bit cold is the biggest fucking problem in the world, while people are fucking jumping on boats to escape the actions of your government that's fucked up their countries for greed, oil, and more neo-imperialism, and they're just trying to fucking live, and you're talking about fucking we don't want them in our country. But you want to have a fucking paddy because your latte is a bit cold today. So fuck you. So at the end of the day, man, we know you're insincere. We know you're insincere. All lives matters, bullshit. There's only two versions of all lives matters. You are either grossly fucking ill-informed, which is possible because your privilege allowed you to not have to know what the fucking world is like, and I'll come on to that. Or you're just insincere. You know exactly like the Jane Elliott experiment. You know exactly what the world is like, exactly how fucking unfair it is, but you don't want it to change because it benefits you, so you come with these bullshit platitudes. And I'll say very quickly about that first thing, the people who are dramatically ill-informed. As I said, I'm going to go back to it. I don't expect you to know everything about my fucking life and existence, or even think about it, because I don't know, and everything about, I won't use the same examples, I don't want to be fucking politically incorrect. there was a TV show many years ago called Little People. That's the name of the TV show. It was about people who had what I grew up calling dwarfism. I don't know if that's no longer an appropriate term. Prime example. Anyway, I don't know about the challenges of these people every single day. My wife loved that show, so we used to watch it all the time. I don't really know enough about the challenges of people with what we used to call dwarfism every single day. So I don't want to be held accountable as being a bad person because I don't know everything about that. But if something about that became to light, you know, it's something that I would want to see moved on so they could live as much of an equal life as anybody else. And I would do my part as best as I could in order to do that because I believe in equality, because I believe in meritocracy. And in terms of that, back to the people who don't know because they got their own shit to deal with, one of the mentors I mentioned went from All Lives Matters to putting on a poster of a Black Lives Matters t-shirt. Just because of the conversation that I'd seen happen in his social media threads and obviously the ones that happened outside of it. Now, I don't give a shit what t-shirt a man wears, but if a man's viewpoint changes or a woman's viewpoint changes and their understanding gets greater, I respect them and I appreciate them for being open-minded enough to see if there's something for them to learn. They don't have to learn because they don't have to agree. You don't have to agree with me. But like I keep on saying, you want to try and tell me that somebody under 5 foot has the same level playing field to dunk in a basketball as somebody who's 6'5". I'm going to tell you you're fucking wrong. Simple as that. You might tell me the examples of the two guys who have got such genetic athletic ability that they can jump as high and dunk a ball. And, you know, this is what they're sending the Morgan Freemans and the Anthony Mackie and all this fucking white supremacy apology shit talking about how, yeah, you can make it. Before them, I must hasten to add, it was Bill Cosby. Look what happened to that motherfucker. Used him as the fucking poster boy for black people who promote white supremacy until he's no longer useful. And then try and get me to run up and down and fucking support him. When he was telling my peoples to pull up their fucking pants and become more conservative like him. Yeah, because we really want to become like you, fucking using Rohypnol to rape fucking women for a 30-year period, you cunt. So there you go. I'm just waiting for the tea on Candace Owens. I'm just waiting for someone to bump the cuppers and spill the tea on Candace Owens. Because see, y'all don't fool us. Since the first day, there have been collaborators. There has never been a movement on this planet where people were suppressed or oppressed, where one peoples were oppressed by another, where there have not been collaborators from within the group of the oppressed who helped the oppressors for leniency, power, or some kind of other higher status. So y'all fucking apologists can send me Candace Owens or fucking Morgan Freeman or Anthony Mackie. So glad that Altered Carbon Season 1 was better than Altered Carbon Season 2. Actually, this is going to be trolling, but it just so happens that he's on the list of people I'm not even sure if he can act. That's a whole nother story. Full disclosure, I had come to that decision about his acting ability before I started seeing him on these stupid fucking videos talking shit. But, you know, I'm a big fan of Marvel, so I wasn't dazzled with him in the Avengers. There's this movie that he did as well about, you know, God's plan and these people who are trying to be together because they loved each other. And then God had another plan. He was like this kind of angel sort of administrator. And they walked around in suits. Fuck if I remember the name of the movie. I'm not going to waste my time looking up in the show notes. But, you know, wasn't greatly impressive. And then Altered Carbon came. I actually watched Altered Carbon because he was in it. And I was excited to see it. So season 1 was disappointing to me because he wasn't in season 1. Because I only saw the advert when I saw him in it. But, you know, seriously, bruv. people still take the piss out of my acting ability, but based on that, I should be a fucking star. Especially because he was acting with such good, you know, the cast of actors were really good. Like the woman who played his sister Ray, acting, I thought her range was amazing. Kel's range was amazing. Oh, Poe, the fucking AI, like, you know, the motherfucker's good act, man. So I didn't get it. Having said that, I must say, oh yeah, the guy who played the original, Takashi, no, his original skin, he was great. But I must say, that said, and maybe this is what the director went for, in season 1, the main character, the white guy, he couldn't fucking act either. So maybe that was... But I digress. So, yeah, you're not fooling us. So, I don't know. This might be the podcast because I kind of ain't got nothing to say. You know, I don't remember the names of my podcast. I ain't gonna lie. But, you know, how the left was lost. You know, the power of Babel. You know, there are loads of podcasts that kind of deal with this now. It's just a testament to the fact, as I said about the white people who I don't hate, the white people who have got their own shit to do in their own lives, their own fucking problems, because if you haven't got a problem, you are technically dead. Their own stuff to focus on, their own dreams, aspirations that they're working towards, who don't know a lot about, you know, or maybe don't know, but don't dedicate time to, you know, thinking about what happens to black people or other people who are suffering injustice in this world. You know, it's just a testament to them that maybe they've never had to deal with this shit. See, I didn't set up a business podcast to talk about my business, but most of the guys I'm thinking of did. I set up a social commentary podcast to talk about social commentary, which is why this topic, all the things that are included in racism, racial injustice, Black Lives Matters, I've been talking about them for almost 2 years now, because that's my reality. And, you know, I was really heartened by some of the conversations I've had where people have actually accepted that by, you know, one guy particularly, when it was interesting, and I really respect this young guy, started out from 1 star, so I ain't gonna bore you with exactly what he was. And then when a lot of young people, other white people kind of jumped in to defend his stance, what happened? He put up a poster, I responded, a couple of black people responded, and then a lot of white people jumped in to defend his original point. Funnily enough, by the time the people jumped in, the apologists and the deflectors had jumped in, he was already like, nah, that's bullshit. Actually, I see the point now. I've been really privileged, because about white privilege, like, no, it's true. I've been privileged to not even have to think about any of these issues until this shit's happened. And I actually understand that now, that, you know, I don't have to deal with this shit every day. I can happily live my whole fucking life and not think about racism once. I don't need to think about racism. For 300, I can live a whole fucking year and not have to think about racism, in terms of the fact that it doesn't actually directly affect me. And I get that's a privilege now. So actually, I retract my original statement that white privilege doesn't exist. And all you other motherfuckers who are here agreeing with it, you're wrong. You know? That heartens me. That makes me think that things maybe ain't as fucked as I kind of previously had thought they were. And, you know, we all know that diamonds are formed under pressure. And every plant that grows has to fight its way through the soil and past the weeds. You know, I'm exhausted at saying that I dislike the fact that, you know, it seems that the way this planet has been constructed, this universe has been constructed, nothing beautiful occurs without a struggle. So, you know, if George Floyd's daughter said Daddy's going to change the world, she may well be right. Because every scenario has a straw that breaks the donkey's back. And it's very possible that this is the straw that breaks the donkey's back, not because the whole world is going to change into revolution, but let's just look at it like, you know, gaining ground. For all the apologists who are never going to change their position because their positions are entrenched, and they frankly don't give a fuck because they are aware that the circumstances and the situation and the structures benefit them and they don't want to lose them, which is what all of that's about. Well, they're never going to change. That's almost like Marie Antoinette. The peasants are revolting. Yes, we know the peasants are revolting. You know, I don't give a fuck. Let them eat cake until they come through your door. So lest we forget, all you wankers, like I was listening to, you know, more Napoleon Hill. I decided to go back to back from Outwitting the Devil to Think and Grow Rich. And there's a whole chapter talking about courage and determination of decision, which centers on the Boston Tea Party and American independence. And it's just amazing that these fucking Confederate flag waving independence people want to talk about looters and rioters, whilst forgetting that they took up arms and fought for their freedom when they thought they were being unjustly treated and no longer wanted to be colonists, ruled and controlled by people who looked on them as less than and treated them as less than. No taxation without representation. I'm going to work you, tax you, but you don't have a fucking say. Slave. Subordinate. Lower than me. Colonist. When we're the empire. You know? It's like you're fighting for something that you don't even know the fucking history of. And those of you who do know the history of it, you're just hypocrites. So, you know, I don't have to really pay any attention to a hypocrite. I'm not wired in a way. This is why I have such a strong, such a strong, almost virile dislike of Trump, because I am wired in a way that if you are hypocritical, I just shut down. I just turn off. So while you're busy talking about your pride in, you know, your society, make America great again, but you want that society to subjugate other people, a society that was founded on the principles of fighting against fucking subjugation and fighting for freedom and equality, and has all these concepts of freedom and equality and inalienable rights and the right of people to pursue life, liberty and justice and individual for all. All of this is in your fucking constitution. All of this is in your constitution, and yet you want to fucking fight to prevent other Americans from having it. Forget the rest of the fucking world. We can get to the rest of the world later. It would still be hypocrisy if you created a fucking utopia of justice and equality in America and then went out into the world and tried to subjugate everyone else. That would be bad enough hypocrisy in itself. But the worst hypocrisy is the fact that you fucking base your whole fucking country's ethos that you claim to be so proud about on events that were based on fighting against tyranny for freedom, and then subjugate members of your own population to tyranny. Fuck out of here. I mean, it's like, these aren't people. My problem is these aren't people I need to have a conversation with. There's nothing to discuss. If you either don't know it, and when it's presented to you, you should go, fuck, yeah, and do something about it, or you are not even worth a discussion with. You just need to be removed. And this is what people don't like. Just like the British in America, if you don't want to allow yourself to be removed without force, you just need to be removed with force. Because what is most definite is nobody is going to allow themselves to be subjugated and subject to tyranny forever. So you're going to go. You got to go. You're going to go. You got to go. It's just how and when. You know what I mean? So that's why there's no point worrying about your fucking opinion. There really isn't. So this isn't actually the podcast I was going to do. My plan had been to read some of the conversations from the Ask Me Anything, because I said I was so fucking tired of having this conversation that I was just going to read the conversation for the Ask Me Anything, because, you know, that would have been something new. Whereas, like I said, because I'm black, I'm a black man with a black family, brought up in the West, born in the UK, and suffered these experiences of racism and educate myself, and I'll say that more importantly, was educated by my peers, thank you all, and decided to, you know, accept the opportunity to educate myself, to understand that racism wasn't just the skinheads who were chasing us down the road, but was a system, and see the effects of that system in every aspect of my life, right from, you know, where the area I grew up in, to the resources that would get put towards that area, into my schooling and community services and health services and how they're different from other areas in different parts, and who the demographics in these areas were, why the black areas had so much less resources and the white areas had so many more resources, right through to my schooling where my teachers did not want me to sit my O levels. They tried to force a whole fucking class of us to sit lower examinations. Whereas in other schools, when I finally got through all that shit, I was meeting kids at A level and university level who, right, when they were trying to force, and I repeat, force me to not sit an O level, but sit a lower exam, which is called a CSC. Other kids were being promoted to sit in fucking OAs and higher levels. So when we met at college level, we were still the fucking lowest level of kids in our classes, because we were being forced to sit lower exams while other kids were being pushed to sit higher ones. You know, just every fucking level of my life, going out into the workplace. When I first got into property, which was around when I was 18, 19 at the start of the Thatcher recession, going to banks and saying, I really want to get into property, being laughed out of the room, without knowing that there was probably another 18-year-old kid somewhere else who had gone into a bank or somewhere and said, I really want to get into property. And they'd said, okay, let me tell you how you can do it. Just every fucking level. You know, I talk so much about myself. I always say this. I probably am partially narcissistic, but in my opinion, I talk about myself because my experiences are the only ones I can validate 100%. And I could go on and on and on, but I am kind of bored of talking about myself. The point is, my vision isn't blurry. I know exactly the fuck every single fucking time I was employed and employed and passed over for a promotion. I know every single time. You know what I mean? Every single time I was employed and passed over for a promotion, which is why I went into running my own businesses. Like, what's the fucking point of this then? What's the fucking point of that? Do you know what I mean? What's the fucking point of coming in and studying every single fucking day for almost a 2-year period to get the qualifications that someone told you would need to be promoted, and then have somebody brought in who is less qualified than you and promoted above you? And trying to work out if that has anything to do with the fact that you're black and they're white. And then you are asked to train them. So that you're asked to train them with what you know so that they can manage you, because they don't know enough. My experience. But hear what? I was told about this from my auntie when I was like 8 years old, when they did it to her as a nurse in the NHS. And I've heard it 100 other times as well. So, as I said, it's a daily operation for us. I don't get to have a podcast and talk about the reality. And as I said, you know, so much of what I talk about relates to my life because it's the only life I can very much verify what the fuck happened in it. I don't get to have a podcast that doesn't talk about racism. I originally started this podcast as one that wasn't going to talk much about racism, because there are lots of podcasts out there that do that job much better than I can, and particularly do it with great detail, which I think is usually necessary. So I always look at this as the ramblings of a, you know, tired and reasonably angry black man, because the detail isn't there, but I know the broad stroke facts are. So this podcast, you know, just impossible to not talk about racism when I deal with it every single day. When I realized that one of the reasons I love the science fiction genre is because it is the most fucking egalitarian and least racist genres when it comes to the characters and the positions they hold. Because it looks to a fucking future that even if the futures are dystopian, the actual the positions of the characters are usually quite utopian. You know, black female leads. Go through Hollywood movies and find me black female leads. Fuck the last 20 years, do the last 2 years. Go for Hollywood movies with black female leads. Central character of this movie is a black woman. Then take out movies about slavery. That's it. Harriet, Color Purple, you're done. Do you know what I mean? So we don't. I don't get that opportunity. That's impossible. It's never going to happen. So, as I said, I might do a follow up to this, because I kind of wanted to speak about, you know, some of the questions and responses that we went through when we did the Ask Me Anything. It didn't go as far as I wanted it to because Facebook did one of Facebook's long things, but I ain't mad. I ain't as mad with Facebook as I used to be. Do you know what I mean? It needed me to put some information in to use the promotion I was going to use, and it was just long because I actually originally started to Ask Me Anything, I'll say quickly. It was only meant to be for the weekend, so I kicked it off on the Friday. I was hoping to be done with it by the Sunday so I could get back to work. But it just ran and ran and ran and ran. People kept on jumping in and putting in more comments. So I ended up taking up the whole week. So I'm also fucking exhausted from talking about racism, which is why I was going to just read the quotes and not actually do a podcast about it. Because I've been talking about it all week. So I will definitely do that because I think there'll be some value in the questions and the responses. But at the end of the day, man, let's hope that this is another push for change. And I'll say quickly, let's hope that this push for change isn't hijacked by the same wankers that the last push for change was hijacked by, with more affirmative action and all the kind of fuckery that makes people feel better and placated but doesn't actually change anything. If we don't start changing the way people think, if we don't start having people like the white people on the protests in the Netherlands and Denmark and Sweden and Australia, if we don't have people thinking like that this is wrong, that this shouldn't exist, that why the fuck, if we don't have people like the white people pulling down the statues of Edward Colson and writing Churchill was a racist on his statue because they fucking know that's true. What we don't need, listen to me, what we don't need, and I'm going to say it a third time so it's clear, what we don't fucking need is another round of sub-racist, white supremacy apologists who employ black people or invest money or donate shit or do whatever the fuck they're told they have to do because of some affirmative action, PC, politically correct bullshit that they don't believe in. That fucking shit, CRE, you bunch of, fucktards, that is what gave us the current political climate we're in. Forcing people to do things against their own beliefs gave us the alt-right, Steve Bannerman, Jordan Peterson, Katie Hopkins, what's that wanker called? John Lennon. What's his fucking pseudonym? Can't remember now. The EDL, Donald Trump, Jair Bolsonaro, whoever the fuck his name is, Hungary, whatever the fuck his names are in Italy and Greece. All these fucking right-wing neo-fascists came out of forcing people to do stuff against their beliefs. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that we should allow people to do things of injustice. That's what the laws are for. But the effort and the emphasis should have been on working with people about the way they think, so their thoughts allow them to make the right decisions. Not people who sit down and have to say, I can't use the N-word anymore in front of you. Or go back in their little groups and go, I can't believe we had to employ that freaking black guy. Anyway, he's not doing so badly. But I'd much prefer to put this other guy in because he reminds me of my nephew. That does not help. There is no long-term benefit in that. And we're living that now. We're living that. So, get the word out there. Tell these fucking idiots, we don't want another round of political correctness. We don't want another round of banning bar black sheep and taking gollywogs off the jab jars. And I don't give a fuck. Let's start working on empathy, getting people to empathize. I listened to a really good podcast called How to Raise Non-Racist Kids. And so I can't remember, I think it's called like, Raising Good Kids is the podcast. And this episode was called How to Raise Non-Racist Kids by Dr. Nzenga something. I'll try and put it in the show notes if I can be asked. Not because I don't like them, but because I don't do show notes very well. But the point is, one of the things it points out is that if you want to raise your kids to be non-racist, when you're talking about these kind of issues, try and relate it back to people who they know and they would care about, and say, you know, well, look, if you've got a friend called Shaquante in your class, how's Shaquante? Do you like him? Yeah. But how do you think he would feel if George Floyd was his uncle? How do you think, you know, Tanisha would feel when people are saying that black lives don't matter, all lives matter, but her family and friends are more under threat? How do you think that makes her feel? If you don't start getting people to empathize, if you don't start making it real to people, all of this forced shit is going to be just what it is. It's going to be what it's always been, you stupid fucking idiots, which is people smiling in your face and chatting behind it. If you're lucky, you're more likely stabbing you in your back. That's the world we're living in. Fucking learn that. What's wrong with you? You can't look back to the affirmative action of the 60s and see how many fucking black people were in these positions and just totally resented by white people because they had to fucking put them there. And even worse, people who were given positions that they didn't fucking deserve because they didn't have the fucking skill set to be there, but were put in there simply because of affirmative actions just to prove racist white people right, that we weren't capable of doing these fucking jobs. Because rather than finding the right person and the right candidate for the right job, they stuck motherfuckers in there just for their face and proved the fucking racist right and fucking did more damage to the cause than anything else. Come on, motherfuckers. Seriously. The fuck is wrong with you? Let me go back to this again. And you know that I've been a kind of depressive motherfucker for the last couple of podcasts. Let me just go back to this. The only fucking ground, the only benefit, the only good thing that I've seen are the people who are not directly beneficial. Black people are the direct beneficiaries of anti-racism. Okay? At least in this example. Obviously, there's racism against Chinese people and there's racism against gypsies, even though the gypsies don't like to call it racism, and there's racism against all kinds of other minorities. But we're the direct fucking beneficiaries of this, which is why, and I've been saying for years, the power is in white people protesting. So fuck it, people, get it right. Like I said, the power is in white people protesting because they empathize with the reality of the world, the way it's structured, the way white supremacy permeates most of what we experience on a day-to-day basis, and they truly in their hearts believe it's wrong. That's why you can look at all these videos and you'll see majority white people pulling down statues. They don't want to be part of that. They accept their history and they accept the things that's wrong with their history. And they accept it's their responsibility to do something about it. That's the only way forward, man. It's the only way forward. GGP and I'm out.
It gaff till it gaff. It gaff till it gaff. I'm illy with the till it gaff. Illy with the till it gaff. Nit gaff, nit gaff. Nit gaff, nit gaff.